What is wrong with nationalism? What is nationalism that liberals fear it? Nationalism is a type of politics which prioritizes the nation and usually the cultural group that is prominent in the culture of that nation. Liberals oppose nationalism for different reasons. All of these reasons devolve down to globalism. However, it is not enough to just see them as people looking for an institutional answer to the world's problems, by forming a single, international body to administrate power. The road to globalism could be through the UN. We may have issues with some of the things the UN does, but it does not help to demonize it because it is an international organization. The nation-state cannot exist isolated and insular. There are too many issues that impact all nations and that require multilateral solutions. This, however, cannot be considered an endorsement of the UN or its affiliates. The issues that concern nations, as sovereign states, also concern subnational bodies such as provinces and cantons and the other units that compose the nation-state. How much power ought these subnational groups have? This and related questions are hard to settle without addressing the way power is shared lower down the pyramid. The city is delegated power by the region in which the city resides. But how much power is a city given? How much power does the mayor have relative to the city councilors? Ultimately, in any discussion about the sharing of power, we get to the individual and his place in the polity. In other words, the ideas and principles that govern our discussions on power sharing at the national level must reference power sharing at the lowest levels. Globalists are not unaware of these issues and the questions surrounding them, but they have universally come down on the side of the elites. Globalists believe power needs to be concentrated in a few hands to operate efficiently, for the good of all. They are advocates of centralized and even dictatorial power because they think this is the best way to get things done. But the best way to get things done is not the best way if the doer is an imbecile or psychopathic. It might be better to make it harder to start a war than the level of difficulty that limits a tyrant. However, such comments only open the door to the problem of cooperatives and flat organizations, generally. If one person does not have some degree of ultimate authority, nothing can be finalized. The agreeable one has equal power, is the person who will never see anything they want enacted. The tyrant or focused individual will fare better than the person who believes in cooperation. He or she will surely be taken advantage of. The problem is, what does it require to have a focus? What are we to focus on? The globalist focus is on the attainment of power. Freedom is a code word for power. Any restraint on power is a restraint on freedom. This is the way the devil incorporates Christians into his agenda. He uses freedom as a code for power. Once he gets people fighting for their freedom, they are locked into the dark side. There is no freedom in Christianity. However, the mistake is to think Christianity is tyrannical. This is what most people do not get. It is why they often think we are still under the law or that we need governments. Many people think Christianity is a theocracy in the way Islam is a caliphate or secularists are globalists. When we speak of there being a lack of choice in Christianity, they assume this is the same lack of choice in a tyranny. Which is why the lure of freedom has such an impact, even on Christians. Christians will not submit to God because they believe it is tantamount to submitting to a priest or pastor. There are no hierarchies in Christianity. We are not as the world. Because of all of this confusion about freedom and coercion, there is a deep misunderstanding about nationalism and its relationship to the church. Globalists do not like nationalism because it preempts the globalist agenda. Muslims reject nationalism because they aspire to a one-world caliphate. Atheists tend to be globalists because they have no basis on which to divide from others other than on the basis that some are Christians. Christians are the only group that are strongly nationalistic. Nationalism is institutionalism. Nationalism views the nation as an institution. Institutionalism proves us with a way to measure value. We ought to help our nation. This adds value to the nation as an institution. Globalists are offended by nationalism because they are not institutionalists. They are liberal, and they live in a reality that is physical. For liberals, living in the flesh makes everything seem a separate issue. Liberals discuss violence against Muslims, violence against natives, violence against indigenous women and children, violence against women and children, violence against minorities, and violence against everything under the sun but white, Christian men. They also do not discuss violence as a concept. Violence is not a problem that deserves to be discussed objectively, it is intersectional violence that is the problem. The depth of the problem is scaled to the victim's position on the intersectional hierarchy. What we need to do when faced with these kinds of situations and this level of disparity is uncover the precepts that guide actions. What is this thinking based on? What rule guides a person's actions? If the underlying motive is a desire for freedom and a prioritization of freedom, it will ultimately cause clashes and a demonization of those whose existence appears to be a barrier to another person's freedom. If we generalize the desire for freedom as liberal, then we are confronted by a very large range of differing conclusions or interpretations as to what it means to be free. There does not appear to be any consensus as to what makes a free person. There are tyrannies in this world and there are many liberal democracies, but they all think they are striving to be free. The tendency is to divide those with political differences into groups. The liberal and the conservative are two common ones. But these are not the only groups one can think of, and even they too can be broken down into left and right-leaning groups. The world recognizes fascism, communism, capitalism, libertarian and various other theocratic and secular influences as valid political divisions. It may seem as if there is nothing that is common to all of these disparate groups. But deep down, at their roots, they are all liberal and they all strive for freedom against all those who appear to restrain them. Liberalism itself has developed a slew of meanings and interpretations. The classical liberal is a far cry from the progressive liberal, other than that both claim they strive for greater freedom. A liberal must believe in freedom. However, no one believes this is a viable path or one that has a feasible destination. There is no objective freedom, it is always relative difference. The liberal is always at war against the things that restrain the full expression of their emotion. Freedom is simply a feeling that never knows rejection. The liberal still retains the mentality of a newborn child. The child believes in their right to be free. Liberals believe they have a right to be unrestrained. But few think anyone else can be trusted with unfettered freedom. Those who call the loudest for freedom also want more draconian laws implemented to constrain the untoward behaviors of those whom they do not trust. It comes down to logic. We cannot be everything to everyone, time does not permit it, so we have to pick and choose what we will be. The person we become invariably reflects what we are born into. It is the simplest, easiest choice. We speak the language and pick up the mannerisms of our family and tribe. This does not only mean we become members of a specific group, but it also means we are not a member of another group. In this sense, it is counterproductive not to be racist. Life causes us to favor what we know. This is the same reason why we make snap decisions about other people. The pressures of life mean we cannot spend weeks or even hours looking into the trustworthiness of people we meet. We look for those who share our values and who remind us of those who we learn to trust. We feel an affinity to those who resemble the people we think were worthy of emulation. Do we give up our family traditions to become a member of an alien group? It is impossible to even make the transition into another race or culture entirely. We are always the outsider. So, we focus on being the person we learned to be from our family. We grow up as an adult with roots in a particular cultural milieu. Some groups are more compatible than others, but the more of the alien group there is, the less need they have to adopt our habits or mannerisms or even language. The more tolerant we are of others, the more prone they are to divide from us. Our tolerance of differences causes us to be replaced. Everyone is racist, but only whites are tolerant of others and intolerant of their own racial profile. Whites have turned their racism in upon themselves. We are guilty of our own success. It is the disavowal of nationalism that has made this possible. If we were proud of our nation, we would be proud of our contributions to it, and what is more, we would be protecting parameters. If our nation is English-speaking, we would be protecting our language. If we valued equality and fair play, we would be intolerant of those who were attempting to do things in unfair and unjust ways. Everyone would be expected to maintain a basic level of decorum. If we were nationalists, we would be proud of our nation's history and mores and intolerant of those who debased our traditions. This is why so many liberals hate the idea of the nation-state and strive to implement globalism. The nation appears to limit a desired freedom. But that is the point, and it highlights a point of divergence between liberal and Christian. Christians are not free. We have a mission, we are required to build the church, which is really the obligation to add value to the things of God. But what good is a mission without a way to measure progress? This has been problematical for Christians, who cannot even agree on who a Christian is, let alone what it means to build the church. We Christians seem more aware of what the church is not, than what it is. How do you measure church growth? If you cannot measure church growth, how do you know if what is growing is a church or a cancerous cell? There are some rather large organizations in incredibly large buildings with crosses on them that talk rather weirdly, but some people still call them churches. There are only two possibilities, according to Scripture. We can only feed one life. Either we feed the flesh or the spirit. This is not two diametrically opposed extremes joined by an infinitely large gray area. We do not get progressively more Christian or spiritual. Our actions do not get us closer to losing salvation, or more demonic. It is one or the other, and this is a motif that is totally alien to how the majority of people think. We reject the idea of absolutes, despite everything related to God being an absolute, including good and evil. Atheists think they know good from evil because they think everything they smile at a disabled person, they have done a good thing and so have earned points in heaven. They accept that one is saved, or not, and no amount of smiling or running for cancer will get you across the threshold of heaven. To understand the issue, one has to go back to Babylon and the Tower of Babel. In this era the tribe was the measure of success. If one was powerful, one belonged to a large tribe, with large properties and herds. It was not complicated. With Nimrod the city-state became prominent. Power was vested in the city-state and its satellites. These developed into nations. Jesus came to usher in a new era. The tribe was no longer relevant. We are organized into nations. The nation is the locus of our power. Britain was blessed by God to spread the Christian message. The period at which the church begins its exodus from Babylon is the nationalist era. Nationalism is the replacement for the tribal system destroyed by Nimrod. If you are not for your nation, something God provided for you, what are you for?